Brisbane is lucky enough to be getting the Olympic Games in 2032. So in this video, we wanted to talk about some of the positives, but also some of the hype surrounding this and get real with what's coming. We're going to talk about infrastructure, jobs, what happens in previous cities in Australia when the Olympic Games came through and previous cities around the world. But this will give you a really good update. Obviously, there's some incredibly strong articles at the moment from the likes of the Financial Review, the ABC, and all of the commentators and analysts around what the Olympics will do. And while none of us have a crystal ball, what I can say from previous research and experiences is the infrastructure and the jobs in particular can be incredible for property price growth longer term. So, Crystal, what's coming from an infrastructure perspective? I know I'm putting you on the spot. I know you've had to do a little bit of prep for this one as well, but what's coming up?
To be honest, it's really exciting. So the Queensland government is looking to squish about 30 years of infrastructure spending into the next 10 years. That's coming in the way of things like upgraded roads, upgraded bus systems, new bridges between the main cities of South East Queensland, so Brisbane to the Sunshine Coast, Brisbane to the Gold Coast. We've got things like light rail and heavy rail upgrades. So all of that public transport system is going to be much, much better improved, which is really exciting for South East Queensland because it has been pretty shocking when you compare it to Sydney and Melbourne's public transport.
You know, it's funny that because I think we get to this point where it's like what comes first, the chicken or the egg? And what we've seen in Sydney and Melbourne that weren't well designed is the population comes, then they get the rates and then they invest in the infrastructure. So this is going to proactively speed up Brisbane's growth cycle.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see. And what we like about what's recently been announced in terms of where venues are located and things like that for infrastructure spending is it's not just centred around Brisbane. They're putting sporting venues on the Sunshine Coast and the Gold Coast, which is going to heavily impact those two markets as well. There's going to be Olympic villages in both of those areas, the Sunshine Coast and the Gold Coast, as well as Brisbane. Not only that, though, there's sporting venues going into places like Moreton Bay area, north of Brisbane, the Redland Bay area, south of Brisbane. So some of these smaller areas are actually going to be heavily impacted by the infrastructure and the spending that they're putting into it with those venues that are coming.
I love that. And that's just like the Australian, state and local council contributions. But then on top of that, there is all of the private development and infrastructure coming through. So the hotels, the restaurants that will come in, things like the Queen Street Wharf that's being redeveloped in Brisbane at the moment. I know Southport CBD is being redeveloped on the Gold Coast. All of those beaches down there are getting redeveloped. The train line down there is getting extended. Same on the sunny coast, the Maroochydore CBD is going in. I think the Brisbane City Council is also, just like they did in Sydney, organised for Ipswich to become the second satellite side of the city with potentially fast rail going from Ipswich straight to the CBD. Then we've got, I know years ago in Sydney, they did the Harbour Tunnel, which was such a big deal. Remember when we were kids driving to the north side and trying to hold our breath through it and realising it was like actually super long. But they're doing like an underground metro in Brisbane as well. There'll be 8 underground stations and underground driving underneath this, the river for the first time too, which is massive, massive for the long-term infrastructure side of the city too.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see. So, yeah, not only have you got the government spending, you do have the speculators coming in, the developers, boutiques, restaurants, the lifestyle side of things that comes with all of that, which is really exciting because I do think we've sort of lagged behind Sydney, Melbourne about 10 years with that sort of stuff. Nice restaurants, nice theatres, nice sort of lifestyle hubs, and we're really seeing that happen here on the Sunshine Coast where we live, but massively on the Gold Coast and Brisbane as well. And I think all of this is going to dramatically impact, hopefully, house prices.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the other things that I think are interesting is apparently, according to the ABC, and I think there's like a Queensland like Olympic Games task force or I don't know the language, but some version. They estimate 110,000 jobs to be created between now and then. Unemployment rate's already 3.5%, guys. So that means that people are going to have to come from overseas. People are going to have to come from the other states in Australia. A lot of it's infrastructure, mining, IT-related jobs, which is the higher income earners. So they'll come up. At the time of the Olympic Games, there'll be 10,000 odd jobs needed at that time, plus all the cafes, restaurants, accommodation, tourism side too. What about the tourism as well? Like I think we're talking couple of million people coming into South East Queensland throughout the games as well?
Yeah, definitely. The tourism is the main thing that's going to, this is why the government wants the Olympic Games. It brings in eyeballs to Brisbane and South East Queensland. So you get people travelling and spending big in our local area, which is really, really exciting. On the back end of the Sydney Olympics, those eyeballs remain for about 2 to 3 years, they say. So it's not only in the lead up over the next 10 years that we're going to see this sort of attention on South East Queensland, but once the Olympics has actually been and it puts Brisbane on the map globally, people tend to stay and people tend to come back because they realise, holy crap, this is a pretty nice area to be.
You know, we already know in South East Queensland, like per capita, there's one of the highest concentrations of professional athletes in the world. A lot of the runners, swimmers, triathletes, like sports people in their off seasons spend time here because between the Gold and the Sunny Coast, in a year that we've just had, which has been crazy, you get 250, 300 days of sunshine. It's very flat. There's really good cycleways. So what I think will happen is you'll get those extra eyeballs, you'll get the wealthy administrators, business people that come to watch, but then the athletes and the trainers of those athletes will go, shit, this is a really, really beautiful place to set up, that long-term base or that long-term opportunity. I think some of those wealthier athletes and admin staff will end up here as well, which is beautiful. One of the reasons why the government loves an Olympic Games from an infrastructure perspective is if they're going to spend $10 million on infrastructure, but then get $8 billion of it back on tourism, it's sort of like doing all this infrastructure for free almost, and that is a big ticket item for the government.
For sure, and I was reading something, and it's because we already have a lot of the amenities in place from the Commonwealth Games in 2018, the Brisbane Olympics is actually not going to cost the government as much as the Sydney Olympics did. So that upside off the back end of the Olympics is going to be massive for Brisbane because whilst there's so much infrastructure spending coming, there is a lot of facilities and amenities that are already there that they can utilise or expand on, which just gives them a massive upside on the end.
One thing I just liked what you said is Sydney. So the great thing about Sydney being in 2000 is we've got a pretty good reference point for what could happen to Brisbane. So between 1997 and 2003, house prices in Sydney around the Olympic Games went up by 97%. Now, what's interesting is that was actually the second half of a previous real estate cycle where Sydney and Melbourne historically wouldn't normally do that strong. So the Olympic Games, the infrastructure, the jobs, the income growth, and the tourism really helped Sydney through that period. But what Catherine Cashmore, one of the analysts that we follow, did is she went and looked at the previous 6 Olympic Games and what that had done. And what they'd found is that different games has had different effects on cities. Some of the cities had increased house prices by about 30%. Others had gone up by as much as 130% over that 5 years before and after the games. So exciting to see this sort of stuff. Obviously, there's been heaps of articles and videos done on this. You're going to hear us talk about this more and more as more information comes in. But I think infrastructure, jobs, incomes, tourism, eyeballs on it, one of the most beautiful places in the entire world that right now is still 100% on average cheaper than Sydney. The beaches right now are literally not even a third of the price of Sydney and Melbourne and Brisbane. Parts of the inner CBD are literally 25 cents in the dollar when you compare the same location in Sydney or Melbourne to Brizzy. So I think all of those things at the moment represent good upside for Brisbane. Whether it's going to do 10% between now and the Olympics or 100% is the thing yet to be unknown. But I think all of this long-term means that South East Queensland will continue to become that city that we all expect it to be longer term. The ABS says 5 million people in Brisbane within 25 years from today, which means it will be the same size as Sydney. Incomes are within 6% of Sydney right now. In Brisbane, incomes in Brisbane are higher than Melbourne, but house prices are 50 cents in the dollar. So I like all of this stuff as an investor personally.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what's to come. It's awesome to see. It's our local area, so I'm loving it. And never know what's going to come. No one has a crystal ball, but things are looking up.
Woo! That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
Getting cool, bro. Yeah. Oh, sweaty. So sweaty. Oh, that's good. Look at that.
So nice, eh?
Oh.